Hello artists, it's Miss Ninman here, and this video is going to instruct us how we're going to start to fill in our Unit 1 Zentangle Pyramid template with our Zentangle designs that all revolve around the emotion of the song we chose to listen to for this unit. So I have a few things out here to help me today while I work. The first thing I have is my Unit 1 packet. This should be all filled in, completed and turned in already. So if there's anything that's missing on here, you'll need to take time to do that. What I want to do is reflect on any of these images that I might find useful while I work. I can think back to any of the information I saw from other artists, what they used. There are resources listed here under step 4, so that if I get stuck and I can't think of what else to put on my pyramid template, then I can search ideas like Zentangles, line designs, and there's a few different ideas on here for you. I know that with this packet, I can also pull up my Unit 1 project page on BB9 to give me any other visual examples I might need throughout this time. The most important page to have handy while you're working on your pyramid is your song choice page. So step 5, pick your song choice. So I have my song by Taylor Swift that I'm listening to with the artist Bon Iver. It's called Exile. I picked it because it feels a little bit more calm and relaxing. I kind of need that right now in my life to have something a little bit more soothing. I know that the song choice is appropriate, and I have a few words already picked out to represent that feeling. So melancholy, peaceful, and wanderlust. I also have a few ideas here and spread out through the bottom to help me with my designs. I also wrote down some search ideas on Google and Pinterest that I use. So I searched peaceful Zentangle drawings and nature-inspired Zentangle drawings. So I did find some resources online that helped me add to these sketches, and I used one of my sketch papers to kind of sketch more on the side once I finalized a few ideas I wanted to use. So you can use that sketch paper to get ideas out, and I would have it out with you as you go. As I was working on mine, I kind of needed to test some of my Sharpies out on there. So I want you to make sure you're all set up with a pencil. We have your Sharpies out, so I have my drawing tools in this container. So I have my 3 different size Sharpies. I have a ruler, and I have some tracers. Now, if you don't have tracers at home while you're working, I want you to get creative with things that you could use to trace that are circular. Even the top of your Sharpie cap is a circle. You could set that on your paper as a tracer. I also have at home different type of micron pens. These come in different sizes, and they're a lot smaller than your regular ultrafine Sharpie. So if you have tools at home that could enhance your work, of course you can use them and add them to your project. I'm gonna set those to the side so that I'm using the same supplies most of you will be using. So what I wanna do as I get started here, like I mentioned before, I did some research. Now anything I find online that is done by another artist, I wanna try and change in some way. So this drawing of the flower I did that I'm ready to use on my final drawing was something I saw on Pinterest, but I changed certain parts of it so it looks a little bit more like my own artwork. So you wanna think about how you're using your resources as you go. On our Unit 1 project page on BB9, I list some requirements as you work. So you should definitely be looking back at that as you work. The first thing we wanna do, make sure your name is on your paper, is think about how you're going to start to fill this space. And the first step is working with pencil. So you're gonna wanna listen to your song while you draw as much as you can. So you're gonna listen to it on repeat over and over and over again until you get sick of it. I'm gonna do as much sketching with my pencil as I can before I move on to Sharpie. And you can go back and forth between your pencil and your Sharpies as you need to. In the end, our drawing should be all Sharpie. So what I'm gonna do is think about how I wanna fill these spaces. One way is that I could do one design here in this triangle, then I could do a completely different design here, then my next Zentangle idea, and then another Zentangle idea. So that's how I could kind of use these spaces to break up my designs. I could do 5 different Zentangle drawings in here, and then I could do 1 here, and maybe 3 different here. Or I could have my Zentangles move across the triangles. So you really have free choice with how you fill this space, how many Zentangles you put on here versus white space. But in the end, on our project page, it says I need to use 3 or more different Zentangle designs. That's why in your packet, I had you try at least 3 different things here. Okay, so I know I need at least 3 or more. For my sketch, I have 1 here, 2, and 3. So I already have 3 there, and I plan to add more after this design is done. So I'm making sure I'm really prepared, and I am going to think about how I'm starting to sketch this in. So if I'm going to sketch kind of random designs, I want to make sure I use a ruler to do that. So for example, I could start to do a line design here. And this is just an example, so I'm going to be doing kind of some random designs right now. Of course, I would be listening to my song while I do this step. Maybe I make this kind of more random looking, so some are close together, some are further apart. That might look kind of cool. All right, maybe I want part of a design to go across these spaces, so I can kind of sketch my next Zentangle in here, my next pattern. Now, if I want areas filled in black, I don't think it'll be worth my time to fill this in now with pencil if I'm gonna take Sharpie later to fill it in. And I guess if this is a bigger space, I'd wanna use a bigger Sharpie to fill that in. So for now, your sketch or your pencil is used mostly just kind of sketch a few things in, and when you're ready, you're gonna move to Sharpie. Now, before I do that, I wanna talk about another option you have. What if, when you put your pyramid together, you want your design to flow a certain direction? I have an example of what I mean by that. So if I take a piece of paper and cut out my template before I work, so this is the same template, if you want to do it this way, what you're gonna do is eventually cut your template out. So what you would do is cut along the outer edge, and all of this information stays together, right? It is one piece of paper. Then I'm gonna fold along each crease so that I can see how this will eventually wrap together and how I can line up my Zentangle designs. And again, this is just an option. So if you'd rather fill it in how I was just doing, go ahead and work with that idea. But if you're going to make the sides connect, once this is done, again, you're gonna fold along the edge of each line that's on your template very carefully so that it actually folds on the line, right? And then unfold it. So you wanna make sure it's actually folding directly on those lines. Now the issue with this is it's gonna be harder for you to hang on to. You are gonna have to find a safe place in your binder to keep this, because now you don't have the 3-hole punch of your paper. So you need to make sure if you're choosing this option, you're gonna be responsible with it. Now what I can do is see how these tabs are eventually going to fold over, and the sides of my pyramid will actually connect. So as I'm drawing, maybe I want this line to come out this way. And then if I want it to connect with this edge, I'm gonna line it up really carefully, make 2 little marks where that turns over to the other side, and then I can continue that line design. So I can see how it'll start to wrap around, right? And then this is the bottom of my pyramid, so you can see how that whole shape is gonna look. Now, when you think about craftsmanship with your work, you'd wanna be very careful with how you're grabbing your paper, because anytime you pinch your fingers in, or if you're crushing things, it's going to show up in your finished product. So you need to be careful if you're choosing that step. Here is a representation of the sides that connect, right? These 2 sides touch, these 2 touch, and these 2 touch. So if you want kind of similar things to happen here and here, but they don't need to touch, you can actually leave your pyramid on the whole paper and just work as it is. But if you need to cut it out to see how they touch together, it is an option. Here's an example I'm working on for my song choice. And here's my sketch that kind of helped me get there. for that. So my goal is that when these sides touch, the flowers all start, or my like flowers, I guess, I kind of did a spin on what a flower looks like, starts in the middle here and is gonna branch out to each side. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. This will be the bottom of my pyramid. So all of the flowers start on the bottom, and then this one works its way up this side. This one is gonna come up this way. And then let's see if I can do this because it's not glued together yet. This one will come up this side. So it's all gonna be starting at the bottom and wrap around the sides. It did take a lot more planning to do it this way. It is a little frustrating to have to line everything up all the time. So this is definitely more of an advanced option. If you'd like to go that direction, you may. But what we wanna focus on is moving from eventually our pencil drawings to Sharpie. So when I move on to Sharpie, I want you to think about craftsmanship, your line variation, and what size Sharpie you're using. So again, you are required to use 3 or more different Zentangle designs. We want your Zentangle designs to show the emotion or feeling of your song. So eventually we should see these things in your artwork. We want to consider how to use the different size Sharpies. And we want to decide how we're filling in our template. So all of those things I just said are on our Unit 1 project page for our summative steps. So scroll down to the summative to see those. So what I want to mention to you is that we all know Sharpies are permanent. So if I make a mistake or something doesn't look quite right as I go, as an artist, I need to decide how I'm going to fix that mistake. Okay, so I'm going to see how this section goes here. If you noticed, I did my pencil drawing with a ruler, and now I'm using that same ruler with my Sharpie lines. So if I create these lovely pencil lines with a ruler and then I just freehand it with Sharpie, let's see how I do. That's not bad. It looks a little bit more shaky than the ones I did with the ruler. So I want to use my tools from pencil to Sharpie. One thing that I'm noticing is as I hold my Sharpie down onto paper, so if I try this up here in this empty space, I get a dot. So I just learned right here that I need to move my Sharpie a little faster at the beginning so I can avoid getting those dots. If something happens that I don't like with Sharpie, since we were just talking about it being permanent, so I need to decide how I'm gonna either hide it or make it look like it's a part of my project. So I could actually go and make dots on more of these. I could hide it by making this into a different shape. And then maybe I can take my fine point Sharpie and fill that area in. So as an artist, when I make mistakes with Sharpie, I need to decide how I'm going to fix that and make it look like it's intentional, it's supposed to be there, or like it never happened. So what I'm noticing is my pencil lines are showing through my Sharpie a little bit. If you start to see that, we want to try and erase as much as we can, right? That's erasing pretty well. Notice I have a few more spots to go in and fill in there. And after I am finished with a step, I definitely want to make sure I erase that pencil. In the end, we'll get a reminder to go over the whole thing and erase. In the end, we want to see that our design is all Sharpie. All right, so we want to think about what Sharpie we're using for what. This could be used for filling spaces in. Your chisel tip is going to be used a lot less for most of you because it's a lot thicker, but our chisel tip has different sides to it. So this is going to be the thickest line I can get with it, and if I turn it on its side, I can get a thin line. So I could create a pattern here, right? I could kind of use it to get different styles and looks. So we definitely want to play around with our Sharpies, see what they can do, how they can look a little bit different from one another, what the ultrafine is going to look like compared to some of the other sizes, what happens when I hold it down, draw a line, hold it down. So we can use our Sharpies, which seem like a simple material, in a much more creative way. So as you're working on your Zentangle, whether it's on the full sheet or whether it's cut out, our job is to work on this until it feels finished. So white space is okay. Filling areas in with thicker black, or if I have areas that are all filled in black, that's okay. But we want to think about what makes the most sense visually for our design, and how are we going to capture people's attention. So we have a lot of different options here. We need to make sure we're using our resources, whether that's in front of us or on BB9 underneath Unit 1 on our Unit 1 project page. Have some fun with this. All of these start to look very different and unique. There are student examples and my own examples on our Unit 1 page. Take a look at those if you need more help, and I hope you have fun creating your Zentangle designs. We are going to stop after this step and cut and glue our pyramids together as a class, so please don't move on until we're ready for that. Have some fun, and I can't wait to see what you make.